In banana republics, the dictators don't have courts that follow the law. They instead have puppet judges that do what they want. When Hugo Chavez came in Venezuela, one of the first things he did is destroy the court and take it over. What Senate Democrats and House Democrats are trying to do is fundamentally corrupt. Their first priority is to change the rules to stay in power. Now, that tells you a lot of things. It tells you, number one, they don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in the voters. If they want to stay in power, there's a real simple path to that. Convince the voters your ideas are right. But that's too complicated. Sometimes the voters disagree. So what are Senate Democrats trying to do? They're trying to add new senators to the Senate so they keep control forever. They're trying to change voting in America so Democrats can never lose. And they want to pack the U.S. Supreme Court with 4 left-wing radicals. This is an assault fundamentally on the independence of the judiciary. Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried this nearly 100 years ago. He had a Democratic supermajority in the House, he had a Democratic supermajority in the Senate, and his own party stopped him. FDR, at the height of his popularity, they said, no, this is a bad idea. Packing the court is a bad idea. It will threaten our fundamental freedoms. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party is a lot more radical than the Democratic Party used to be, and they're perfectly happy to tear down the institutions of democracy, to tear down the institutions that protect our Constitution in order to try to ram through their agenda. You didn't see Republicans, when we had control of the Senate, try to rig the game. You didn't see us try to pack the court.
I'm sorry, what? This is Ted Cruz claiming with a straight face that Republicans never rigged the game when it came to the Supreme Court. Now look, I'm not saying that Ted Cruz is a liar. I'm just saying that he could claim 2 + 2 is 77 and he'd be less of a liar than he is right now. So that we're crystal clear, yes, Republicans unequivocally, undoubtedly, brazenly, and shamelessly rigged the game when it came to the Supreme Court when they had the majority in the Senate. Obama nominated Merrick Garland to the bench, where his nomination languished for nearly a year because Republicans decided that, in fact, it wouldn't be proper to seat a Supreme Court justice in an election year and the American people should be able to have a say, which alone was bad enough. Alone was evidence that the GOP was willing to rig the game for their own partisan benefit with some tortured new rule that they cooked up out of thin air. But then they went ahead and confirmed Amy Coney Barrett not only during an election year, but while people were voting. Americans were literally already casting their ballots when they rammed through her confirmation. So when Ted Cruz says that Republicans don't rig the game, he is willfully denying objective reality. Consider too, the literal definition of court packing is the practice of changing the number or composition of judges on the court, making it more favorable to particular goals or ideologies. When Republicans changed that number from 9 to 8, they were court packing. When they then raised that number from 8 to 9 once a Republican, Donald Trump, came into office, that was court packing. Democrats aren't looking to pack the court, they're looking to restore balance that was decimated by Republicans. Let's be honest here, Democrats only even considered adding justices after Republicans made up the rules as they went along to get more conservatives onto the bench. It didn't even become a conversation until they subverted their own rule about no confirmations in an election year to get Amy Coney Barrett seated. So if Republicans have anyone to blame for this push to expand the court, they might just want to look in a mirror. And by the way, consider too, Ted Cruz himself argued for keeping the Supreme Court at 8 permanently if Hillary Clinton won the election. He said, quote, "There will be plenty of time for debate on that issue. There is certainly long historical precedent for a Supreme Court with fewer justices. I would note just recently that Justice Breyer observed the vacancy is not impacting the ability of the court to do its job. That's a debate we are going to have." And yet now, the guy is out here grandstanding about the sanctity of the number 9 on the court. Now he's grandstanding about not injecting politics onto the bench. If Ted Cruz has an issue with any of this, maybe he should take it up with Ted Cruz. And by the way, besides the importance of rebalancing the court politically speaking, there's also a logical reason to expand the court to 13 justices. For most of our history, the number of seats on the Supreme Court correlated to the number of circuit courts. In 1801, there were 6 circuit courts and 6 Supreme Court justices. The next half century followed that same practice. There was a 7th seat added in 1807, a 9th in 1837. There are now 13 judicial circuits, meaning that expanding the Supreme Court to 13 wouldn't be some radical departure, it would actually be keeping with past precedent. Now, as for Ted Cruz's comments in this video, he makes some absurd claims, like suggesting Democrats don't believe in democracy, and that if a party wants to be in power, they should convince the voters that their ideas are right. Now, first of all, claiming Democrats don't believe in democracy is rich coming from the guy who objected to certifying the election results and helped validate an insurrection at the Capitol. Not exactly sure Ted Cruz is the best messenger for a healthy democracy here. But second of all, Republicans are actively engaged in passing hundreds of voter suppression bills across the country. Bills that are purposefully designed to prevent people from voting if they're more inclined to vote for Democrats. Bills that put the same number of drop boxes in both tiny rural red counties and sprawling urban blue counties. Bills that limit the number of days of early voting because they were used by Democratic voters. Bills that limit the hours that polls are open. Bills that limit weekend voting that correlate to black church drives. And yes, bills that even prevent food or water from being distributed to those waiting on long lines who just so happen to disproportionately be people of color who vote for Democrats. So Ted Cruz might claim that Democrats are incapable of convincing voters that their ideas are right, but if Republicans were confident in their platform, they wouldn't have over 300 bills pending across the country with the sole intention of preventing people from casting ballots. Cruz even says that if voting access is expanded, that Democrats will, quote, never lose. And that really does say it all. If allowing people to vote means that Democrats won't lose, then that doesn't exactly speak volumes about the Republicans, does it? He's basically telling on himself that the only reason Republicans do manage to win is because they have been able to rig the system. Republicans gerrymandered congressional districts in states across the US, for example, packing all of the voters from cities into a single district, which is what Republicans did in North Carolina's 12th district, where voters from Greensboro to Winston-Salem, then all the way down to Charlotte are all in one district. They did the same in Florida's 5th, Pennsylvania's 7th, North Carolina's 1st, Texas's 33rd, North Carolina's 4th, and on and on. And while that impacts the House, that's not to say anything about the inherent Republican advantage in the Senate. Remember, Senate Democrats represent nearly 42 million more Americans than Senate Republicans, and yet still the Senate is just barely 50-50. And you want to tell me that Republicans are complaining about representation? The Republican Party's entire existence is predicated on entrenching minority rule. So Ted Cruz can stand up there and try to rewrite history when it comes to the Supreme Court, but his disingenuousness is only further proof that the GOP isn't capable of acting in good faith. Adding seats to the court isn't about grabbing power, it's about balancing it. And nothing scares Ted Cruz and the Republican Party more than fairness. To see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. And for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I discuss the week's top stories and interview major players in the world of politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.